Welcome back to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate the best contributors to our independent policy movement for progress to bring power to the people. Today, with us on the program, we're going to be having Adam Christensen. He's a congressional candidate in Florida's 3rd District. He's also a small business owner. And today we'll be talking about his campaign and some of the goals that he's looking to be able to accomplish, as well as how he thinks we can get those things done. So we hope you all will stick around for this conversation with Adam. I know there's a lot of good stuff to come. Okay, we are live. Welcome, Adam, to the program. It's great to be able to talk with you, man.
Appreciate you having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Holding up all Thanksgiving, given the crisis is. But I'm really glad to be able to have you on today's program. Adam, the first thing I'd love to just be able to focus on with you today is to get to know you a little bit better. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of candidates having a lot of policies that they want to get done, but we want to get to know you first, the person. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, you're a small business owner. What were some of the things you were doing as a business owner, as well as otherwise, in your time before running for office?
Yeah, so the very first company that I started was right out of college, actually. Basically, I had somebody come to me and say, we just had to pull $60,000 worth of this peppermint oil off the market because we bought it from India, and it was fake, and we didn't know. And so we basically got taken advantage of. And so that was how I got started. But basically what I started to realize is most of the products that we buy and sell that are sold by the biggest companies in the world that have the best marketing and the best packaging, they aren't real. A lot of them are completely fraudulent, yet we are paying 2 or 3 times the amount we ever should be for a fraudulent product. And so that is kind of what my day job has been ever since I graduated from college, basically looking through marketing schemes and telling people whether or not they're getting taken advantage of.
Okay, I think that's a very applicable field to politics too, because I frankly think there's a lot of fake advertising in the political realm as well. I'd love to hear what inspired you to make that transition from working as a consumer advocate and basically debunking some of these marketing schemes to wanting to take the drive to politics.
Yeah, so it actually went hand in hand for me, at least. When I look at, especially, let's take healthcare, for instance. When I was starting to try to provide benefits and trying to get healthcare for employees, it was $8 to $10 grand per employee.
Yeah.
I'm a small company. I'm just starting up. I started with $3,000 that I made from a summer camp. And then after a month and a half, I got down to 68 cents in my bank account. I was like, I'm going to be on the street if this does not work. And so for me, lots of startups, and especially self-funded businesses, family-owned businesses, they don't have the capital to be able to, number one, go and hire really good people because they can't provide all of the benefits. And at the same time, startups can't compete. Why? Because if you cannot hire the best people, because they won't leave their other jobs where they have some security and they don't have to worry about, if their kid gets cancer, them going bankrupt, then small companies just can't compete. And so what I realized was, if we're spending $8 to $10 grand per person on healthcare, and insurance companies are taking 30% of that, but then telling us that the reason, that everything is so expensive is just other reasons, my response to that is, you're a middleman. We don't need you. You're taking our money at the same time. So for me, it's that's one thing that, when I talk to especially conservatives and independents, like where I'm running is an extremely red area. I grew up in a very conservative household in Indiana, one of the most conservative counties in the country. And when you talk about fraud, corruption, and people stealing money, and you're able to frame it in a way that shows who the actual enemy is, not just who people have been blaming for years, for instance, immigrants or people that are poor or people that are our same class, when you frame it and show people that, look, your conservative values are being taken advantage of, and here's the real enemy, they get angry. And you see the rage that they've used against a lot of people that they shouldn't have for a very long time turn to a place where it should be targeted towards.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. First, it's understandable you go to politics because as one individual alone without the authority of the government, you can only do so much in exposing these frauds. And even when you expose it, it's like, okay, we're angry now. We see the problem. We feel like we're being sold a false bill of goods, but now we can't actually change the problem of eliminating that middleman. And also, I love the point of just the business side of why universal healthcare is a really important endeavor. I know from running several startups myself, you don't want to be having to manage a second business of simply saying, how do I maximize the coverage my employees are getting while minimizing the cost? So I love that perspective and the framing of these truly progressive ideas in a conservative view. I wanted to ask you, as a small business owner, why you targeted Congress as the first place you wanted to try and get involved politically compared to local or state elections. What do you think the federal government is not doing for the people that made you want to run there first?
Well, the way I look at it is who has the actual power to make change? Who actually writes the laws that affect all of our lives? And for me, when I looked at, number one, the fact that the person that we have had here running he's been here 8 years, I think, Ted Yoho, he was one of only 4 people who have voted against making lynching a federal crime. He doesn't think that the Civil Rights Act is constitutional. And when I saw that he was going to retire, I thought there's an opportunity for someone. And so my first thought was, who am I going to go help? I'm a young guy. Like I can volunteer. I can give some money. I don't have much, but I can do something to try to help flip the district and, actually change people's lives for the better. And when I went to look at who was going to be running, I was not impressed. I did not see somebody who could actually communicate ideas that would change people's lives in an effective way or a way that could actually win. So for me, healthcare for everyone, that's a small business tax cut.
Yeah.
If a business doesn't have to pay $8,000 a year, small businesses benefit the most out of anyone. Same thing with middle-class families. I mean, progressives have done a very good job of creating policies that work. They've just not been able to sell them effectively.
I agree with that.
And so Republicans have done an excellent job of marketing, branding with absolutely horrible ideas. And so for me, universal childcare or Medicare for all, that's a middle-class and small business tax cut, because you pay private and you pay public taxes. And right now, your private taxes are the reasons you can't get ahead. Those are the money that you are paying to private companies that we shouldn't be.
Okay, so Adam, I'd love to extrapolate beyond healthcare now. Obviously, I think that is one of the basic services that is not just a moral right, but an economically beneficial system. What are some of those other policies that you're trying to champion in your campaign? Let's say issues 2 through 5.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned the second one. I think universal childcare would be huge, especially for poor and middle-class families, because right now, every single person who has a family, they spend about $10,000 to $13,000 on childcare per child a year.
Wow. Yeah.
In Canada right now, they have a system where every dollar they put in, they get $1.25 back. So it's a great investment. At the same time, if you're no longer working simply so that you can have childcare and you have that freedom, you not only have more money in your pocket, but you have freedom to be able to actually do whatever you would like to do. So you could start a business. You could actually take that freedom back into your own hands. You could actually have an American dream. So that's one. Number 3, I think the next one is, right now, we don't allow 17-year-olds to buy alcohol. We don't allow them to buy tobacco. We don't even send them to war typically. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, we allow predatory companies to come and say, we will give you $200,000 of debt that you'll never repay so that you can go to college. And right now, that predatory debt is stopping them from buying a house. It's stopping them from being able to start a family. It's stopping them from being able to do the basic things that people have done for years. And so the basic pitch that I give is every single policy that we have, I approach it, just like you said, from a small business mindset of, right now, I believe that if you work 8 hours a day, you should be able to afford a home, you should be able to start a family, and you should be able to have a little bit of money left over. So at the end of the month, or at the end of or on the weekend, you can go out and you can take your family, you can go to the movie theater and not feel bad about it and feel like, did I spend too much? Am I going to be able to put food on the table next week?
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, I don't think that's radical. I know a lot of people, especially here, try to frame it as, and I'm like, look, if anything, progressive politics is almost conservative in the way, if you frame it correctly, of we are focused on people. We're not focused on greed and giant corporations. And I keep telling people, and this seems to work really well, but the very first progressives were Republicans.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt, 1890s. They went against Rockefeller, they went against JP Morgan, and they basically said monopolies and corporate cartels are killing capitalism, and we have to get rid of them. Otherwise, we will not have an actual free market. And so I speak at it from that kind of a side of perspective. Obviously, people that are running in much more democratic areas can speak to it to a different way. But I try, obviously, for where we're at, you have to approach it that way. And I think it's a really great way to approach it anyway.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. You do have to kind of speak to where the people are so that they can gain that trust for you, that you're speaking their basic language, you understand their value system, and that your policies are matching them. So I love that, speaking where they are before you try and take them to where they need to be. I'd love to just focus on those additional policies that you just mentioned beforehand. I think both of those are clearly hot button topics, especially right now, as we've seen a lot of parents have to be the primary caregivers in a lot of cases of child care because of this coronavirus crisis. I'd love to hear, in your opinion, what universal child care looks like. Because I think a lot of people who live in urban environments can imagine what that looks like, potentially dropping off your kid at a daycare center, having that taken care of. But how does that look in like rural communities as well, where people are much further apart? Can you explain what that program looks like?
So there's a lot of different things that it would entail. Number one, after school programs, especially for rural areas. If your kids are already at school, number one, they should be fed. And you should not have a single kid that's hungry at school. Number two, after school programs that make it so that if your parents are working, you actually have a place that you are watched. They are not on their own. That's a big one. For rural areas, that would be huge. Right now, it just doesn't happen, or they're not able to pay for it. In a lot of rural areas, especially around here, there's a lot of agriculture. So a lot of them are actually going straight from school to working on the farm. Now that is a little bit different. And so especially in the urban areas, especially in the cities, that is really where universal childcare is going to have the biggest effect, is the larger population centers. However, especially in places like North Central Florida, we have to be able to make sure that, number one, after school sports are funded in all of our rural schools, because that's an easy way to make sure that kids are not going somewhere else. Otherwise, there's a lot of after school programs. So I think, especially for here, that's a big one that we focus on, is here are actual programs that are already offered for some people, but not everyone can afford them. And so we want to make sure that everyone can take advantage of them.
Okay. And so just to follow up on that, the boundaries of what universal childcare would look like, because I think there's been a varying scale of what people would call universal childcare. Some prescribe it to be like a 24/7 service. Let's say you and your wife or you and your husband wanted to go have a date night. You could be able to drop the kids off somewhere. And this is, to me, sounding a little bit more potentially pragmatic. It's an extension of what would traditionally be the school day to eventually reach the length of when we're working, our 9 to 5s that are growing into 9 to 6s and 9 to 7s. But that premise of an extension of the school day and having someone who can take care of the kids if you otherwise would have been burdened with hiring a babysitter. So would you say that's accurate? It's not like you can go drop off at night kids at a child care center for free. It's an extension of the school day? Or is there more to the program that you'd love to detail?
For me at this moment, if we're able to do the first part successfully, that's where we start. That's not where we finish, but that's where we start. And I think being able to convince people that that is the easy thing to do as an extension, it's almost an extension of funding education in some places. And you can make that argument, and people don't typically get upset by that. And so what we want to do is, like you said, we're trying to speak the language of the people that we are talking to. We're trying to come to where they're at. We are not watering down policy. We never water down policy, but if we are able to frame, market, and be able to speak in a way that people are like, yeah, actually, that's just, that makes sense. That's what I want. That's easy. That's simple. I like that. That is what we're trying to do. And then we use the progressive policies, and we come in the back end with the actual things that work and that we know work, and be able to give it. Because that's one thing, especially in rural areas, that Republicans have done a very good job of. They make the moral and the emotional argument, but they have nothing to actually back up and actually push through at the end of the day. But it doesn't matter, because they win people's hearts, they win people's minds, and then, whatever happens, happens. That shouldn't be how it happens. We have to fight them on that, and then actually put together the policies that can go through. So the way that I like to frame it and approach it, especially for this area, is that is what I try to do. I try to make that emotional and personal arguments. And yes, we have the policies.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the approach, frankly. You know, most people the viewers of this program are going to love policies. They're political wonks. They want to dive into understanding exactly what's going to get implemented. But when you look at your traditional voter, a lot of the times they just want to have the politician be the one who takes care of it for them. And they want to understand that that person aligns with them value set wise, that they're looking to improve their lives in material ways, but they don't want to get dug into all the minutiae. So I totally agree with that general approach of marketing is how you win hearts and mind. Policy is not. That's how you actually improve the lives at the end of the day.
Let me use this example. Right now on the market, most of the best products that have ever happened, you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Anybody remembers TiVo?
I have a TiVo. Yeah.
You have? You really have? Whoa. Okay. Wow. You are maybe the one and only person who has ever bought one. But
it came with a family reunion. We got it for free on some bundle package, but it's great.
There's your issue. So TiVo paved the way for what almost every single cable company does now as far as rewinding live television, as far as all of the basic services that you now expect. TiVo paved the way. The problem was they were not able to market it and actually gain any market share. So they had the best product. They were not able to actually get it into a place where it was used widely. And so what happened was you had other people that came in and tried to mimic it. And so right now, like I said before, we have some of the most widely sold products are not the best products. That is one thing I have learned. The biggest companies on the market do not sell the best product. They are just able to market it the best. And so that is one thing when I open this up and I say that progressives have not done a very good job of that. That's what I mean. It's marketing and it's branding. And if you are able to sell people on the marketing and the branding, and unfortunately, professionalism and marketability matter more than what you actually have. And that's not me being cynical. That's just the way it is. And so what we have to do is get very good at the marketing and be able to actually implement the policy once we do that. We've been starting the opposite direction.
I completely agree with that. I would say the other half of the side is that these big companies have the distribution systems. They have the partnerships already in place. And I'd say that's equally important is, you know, people have general points where they're going to go get their information. And you kind of want to have an infrastructure system set up so that you're reaching people where they are. Because before you can deliver a message, you have to be in front of their face. So I think those go hand in hand. And a lot of the times progressive politics have focused on the end good before focusing on the distribution system and the messaging to get people in. So I love that approach. Before I focus on tactics, I'd love to transition to the second one you mentioned beforehand, education costs, and how we've been marketing to kids these very expensive college degrees. And you wanted to have a system where we can basically provide that education of low cost or absolutely free. And so I'd love to hear, in your opinion, where we should be guiding kids in general in the educational system. We've had this debate of, is college right for everyone? Like, that's been the biggest framework of when I've been trying to, in my local community, reach more Gen X folks, boomers. They're like, not everyone needs to be going to college. We need these people who are working at the gas station, vocational skills. What do you see as the incentives that kids should see when they come out of the primary school system? Do you think that saying we give free college education over incentivizes college, or do you see a benefit of everyone going to college?
I don't say that college is free. And here's why. You and I already paid for it. In 2008, we bailed out every major bank and almost every major player. We used our tax dollars and our ability, and we made an investment. We made investment in those companies, and they made all their money back. They got bigger, they got stronger. And what happened to us? We never got it back. Our education got more expensive, care got more expensive. And at the end of the day, every investor that you know, every investor that I know, they expect to get a return on their investment at least 2 to 3x after 3 to 5 years. Did we ever see that money back? No. And we just bailed them out again. So we take the wrong approach. I don't think that we should really even call it college. The way that I refer to it is we are going to pay public education from pre-K to 16th grade. Okay. At this point, college is the extension of what high school was 30, 40 years ago. If you don't have a college degree, you are right back where people were without a high school degree 30, 40 years ago. And so we need to make it so it's not even a question of people being able to afford or being able to go. It needs to be assumed that they will continue their education, either in a college like you and I know, or in a trade school.
Okay.
So we have to, that has to be funded, no questions about it. We've already paid for it. It is not free. They owe it to us. That is our money coming back right to us. So that's how I refer to it, because as soon as you say something, you're getting something for free, especially to conservatives or Republicans, they automatically freak out. And even some Democrats I've found. And so changing the language and changing the marketing, it goes a long way, I think.
Yeah, I do like that shift in the language. I'd be curious in your opinion when you talk to these people. I think there's a lot of people who feel like our K through 12 isn't properly preparing kids in the first place. What is 4 extra grades going to give them? What do you tell them of why we need to shift to K through 12? And do you also adopt things like pre-K into that education stream as well?
Well, pre-K is what we talked about, universal child care. Most pre-Ks are not paid for. And so the only people that go to pre-K are people who have money, which means that you have an entire group of individuals that are already farther ahead than everyone else as soon as they hit kindergarten to begin with. So right there, you already have disparities right there. And so you have to make all education, it doesn't really matter what it is, just seem like something that is normal and a part of society, and there's no issues there. I do agree that right now, especially kindergarten through 12th grade is not adequately preparing kids for a lot of things. I think one of the things as well as that has been hindering getting to college is standardized testing. I think that a lot of teaching has been hindered by standardized testing. And so I think that is one thing that, most of the world does not do that. And yet they are farther ahead in education than we are. And so right now, I know a lot of people, and this is one of those traps as well, is when you mention that the United States is not the greatest thing in the world of everything, people don't like that.
Yeah, right.
So how do you get around that? And so that's also a challenge, but that's where we're at, is you have to you don't make it seem special. College is not special anymore. If you have money, you can go, but it should be assumed that it is an option for every single person, and it's just an extension of your education.
It certainly feels like it in the employment market. It's the baseline requirement for so many jobs out there. So it should not be treated special if that's a baseline entry. If you're not working something that's a minimum wage job, like everything else requires a degree for the most part. So I agree with you there. Yeah. So Adam, I'd love to transition now into, we know where we're trying to aim in the solutions, and we get some of the messaging of how we actually talk about these things. The language we use with the public and trying to inform them is a little bit different strategically than how we would message to people who are already on the inside, the people in Congress. If you're able to win your election in the 3rd District of Florida, how do you plan to try and work with Congress to try and advance some of these causes? What's your strategy for implementation?
So there's a couple things that I talk about. This is one thing that after 2008 really was poorly done, is that the Obama administration, to get elected, had this huge movement, masses of people that were organized in the streets. And what happened as soon as they won, they let it go. They let it dissemble. And right now, what we have seen, and this is one thing, people keep bringing up things like defund the police and other things. And my response to that is, for activists and for people that are on the streets, absolutely, you need to use the most powerful language and the most powerful push as you can. Politicians need to go a step right below that, where they still have the progressive policies, but they're able to make it seem like it's not as extreme, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're the reasonable ones here. Yeah, no, I 100%. I've said that a ton of times. We have to understand the role difference between a elected leader or a prospective elected leader and the activist crowd.
And what I've always said is, the people that I want lighting a fire underneath my butt every single day is the activist crowd.
Yeah.
I'm going to seem like the bad guy to some of them because I'm not willing to go as far as they are. But at the same time, if they are going farther than anybody else will, it makes especially elected officials feel like they are the middle of the road. And what I've seen, especially with politics for your entire life, is Republicans have gone as far to the right as they possibly can, which pushes Democrats to the right.
Yep.
And eventually they end up at the center when they're supposed to be the left party. Now, one thing I've really enjoyed over the past few years is people like Justice Democrats, as well as Ro Khanna and some of the others that have said, no, we have to push that as far left as we can to drag the center back. And so I think that there has to be voices like that. I would love to be one of those that continues to drag it back, because at the end of the day, nobody starts a negotiation with anyone who's important by giving up ground before the negotiation starts.
Yeah,
healthcare.
We gotta have some anchoring. Yeah, it just makes sense. If you're gonna start a negotiation, obviously there's gonna be some compromise that's gonna happen, and that's gonna get you dragged closer to your opposition. And so start where you want to be aggressive and land where you actually want to get.
Well, here's the thing that most people don't do. You start a negotiation with things that you are willing to give up. You start your position with things that you know they'll never accept. But when you give them up, you seem like you're compromising. You seem like you're the reasonable one. And so for me, when it comes to policy, you got to do that. Because if you start with Medicare for all, you're going to get a public option. If you start with a public option, you're going to get nothing. If you start with socialized medicine, you will get Medicare for all. That's the way it is. And so people need to take, especially with healthcare, I think activists need to take it even a step further, so that the politicians can come in and seem like the moderate ones. And we saw that with the Sanders campaign. We saw what they were able to accomplish. And I think there needs to be even larger scale push.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with this tactical approach, but I wonder how you try and balance that, like, activist versus political leader type role where, you know, for some, they would say it might come off disingenuous. Just say what you want compared to the aggressive position. How do you counter those people to say, believe me when I say this is where I stand, if you're also saying we should be a little bit aggressive in our negotiation points?
My campaign's run by activists.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. At the end of the day, I seem like the reasonable one, but the policies and the things we're pushing for, we are well versed in what needs to happen, and we understand that there is a firm game plan at the end of the day as far as what we need to accomplish, and there are tactics that you have to do. A lot of people don't want to admit this. They want to say, you know, show them the best policy and it will go through. It doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, politics at the end of the day is just a bunch of tightly wound, and this is something that I'm going to get in trouble for by my campaign manager, but politics at the end of the day is a tightly wound ball of schemes that you hope are going to pay off at the end, and you're able to convince people and get them to do what you want. That's what every single politician is at the end of the day. And they don't want to say it, they don't want to be personable about it, but that is what it is. And so if you're not good at that, if you're not good at that, then you should not be there. And if you are not good at that, and you need to be the person right behind the scenes that is pushing the policy or pushing the activism or doing whatever that is, there are different roles. And I think that right now, a lot of people need to understand that. One quote, this is one that you talked a little bit earlier. One quote that I have kept in my mind, I don't know if you ever watched the TV show Westworld.
I have.
But the very last season, I thought that there was one thing that the main character in that said that was absolutely, it hit me hard. She goes, "It took money to build this world. It's going to take money to tear it down." Progressive campaigns need to understand this, that if you are not well funded, if you do not have, like you said, the distribution network, if you do not have all of the little things that allow these centrists and moderates and other people to be able to win, if you do not build that infrastructure, you will keep losing. It will keep being a David and Goliath situation. And you have to match them. You have to play the infrastructure game, the scalability. You had startups. If you cannot scale a startup, it doesn't matter.
They're not going to invest in you if you don't have the infrastructure plan to scale up.
Exactly.
Adam, I'm loving what I'm hearing tactically. I wholeheartedly agree with this message. The last thing I wanted to touch on before we let people know how they can help your campaign if they like what you had to say today is touching on some of our community values here at the Hill of Roses. Two of our biggest platforms, because you've really hit on universal basic services with the start of this interview, but the other two are universal basic income as well as democracy reform. And I'd love to hear what your opinions are of universal basic income and then what you think we need to do to repair our democracy.
I think that the pandemic has made it a lot easier for people to come around to the idea of a universal basic income. When we first started this campaign, it was an idea that I thought might be viable in 4 to 8 years, just how things were moving. I didn't think we would be able to talk about it. With the pandemic, we're able to talk about it. Why? Because right now we're able to say, we decided to give money to the biggest companies and hedge funds and billionaires in this world, and yet we were not willing to take care of normal people. We took a top-down approach where we gave money to companies, and we gave money to banks, and we made sure that the banks wouldn't go bankrupt. But what happened was, when you give money to those people, who's able to pay their mortgage? No one. Which means at the end of the day, the bank is still trying to extract that mortgage payment from you, but you don't have the money to do it. So if we've given money to people to pay for their housing, for their food, it goes up. The system is okay, but it didn't happen that way. And so right now, what we are able to say is basically, we took the wrong approach. You have corporate socialism. And instead, what we should do is taking care of people, because everything else would have been fine. And so I have been pushing, and ever since COVID has been pushing, for emergency universal basic income of about $2,000 per month, similar to what Spain did. I think that a lot of people are very open to that at this moment. The beautiful thing is, and what a lot of progressives do not realize is, if you are able to push through something that is popular and people, once they have it, will never get rid of, you win. And so if you're able to take advantage, what's the quote? The quote is, never let a crisis go to waste. If you're able to push through an emergency UBI right now, UBI will be very difficult to take off the table post-COVID. That's what people have to realize. And so from especially marketing perspective, you get that done, and then people try to take it away, it's not going to happen. Same with Social Security, same with Medicare. That's what it is. And so, and then what was the other one?
Democracy.
Democracy. I'm one of those people that firmly believes that corporations should not be able to give to campaigns. I'm one of those people that does not believe that lobbyists should exist. I think I fall into the idea of every single person should have the same amount of voice and weight as far as giving goes. And so for me, I believe in publicly funded elections where everybody has, I don't know what the exact amount is. I'm fine with everybody having $100 and they're able to give it to any political campaign that they want. And that way, you cannot self-fund your own campaign typically, or you cannot go to a couple giant donors and say, hey, give me enough money to run. At the end of the day as well, you're going to have working class people that can now run. And Congress people are not going to spend 6 to 7 hours on the phone begging for money every single day. This is one thing that most people do not realize, most people don't want to talk about, is when you run a campaign, for instance, us, we try to stay away from as much as possible, but to be able to scale, be able to have that money, candidates have to be doing call time where they call rich people for 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 hours a day. And even in Congress, they still do that. They're not allowed to do it in the Capitol, but they go across the street to sit in a little, like, shielded little thing.
That's like 2/3 of their time. Yeah.
They're not in committees. That's where they are. And so you have to realize that unless these are funded, unless we find a way to take the power away, we could put term limits in. It does not matter. Why? Because the same people that funded the last person and held power, they can switch out a face, they can switch out a name, they can switch out, whatever gender the person is. It does not matter. Their values are the ones that are going to Washington, not the person who's actually
candidate's going to win. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because that's what's going to build up the infrastructure, and that's what's going to let the message get out there. Adam, I really appreciate you speaking today. I think your tactical approach is really refreshing for a progressive candidate, because it's very realistic about what the system is and what we need to do to obtain power to then redistribute that power outward to the people. For those that enjoyed hearing what you had to say today, how can they be able to help? We have your website, For the Many, Not Just Me, scrolling across the bottom of the page. How do you want them to help you out?
So there's a couple ways. Obviously, we are running a grassroots campaign. Our district is about a +8 Republican. With the incumbent being gone, it's probably about a +6. With the fact that felony disenfranchisement just got knocked down in Florida, it's probably about a +5, +4. We are running against 11 Republican candidates, most of them self-funded. The biggest amount of voters that they are going to get is probably about 15% to get out of their primary. They're going to spend $700,000 to $800,000 just to get out of their primary. right now. A guy who looks like he's going to get popped through is a renowned racist. He also didn't want to tell people this, but he went to Hollywood to try to become an actor and failed miserably. And then his dad forced him to come back and run for Congress, and he paid for it the first time against Ted Yoho 2 years ago because he was so embarrassed of his son. And now he's running again. He just got endorsed by Roger Stone, Dana Lausch, Charlie Kirk. He's down at Mar-a-Lago every weekend. And this is somebody who is going to be a lot of fun to take down in November. But to be able to do that, number one, we need people and we need money. People to be able to canvass, phone bank, text bank, do everything you need to do with a grassroots campaign, and money to be able to actually get out the message of, hey, here's Judson Sapp. Here's him trying to become a liberal Hollywood actor in California. Oh, here's him in a gold chain with a purple hat. You need to be able to tear these people down and show them for who they actually are. And to do that, you need the funds to do it. And so we have to run an excellent campaign. Our campaign is run by 50 people under the age of 26 who, just like me, thought we don't have a choice. We have to fix everything now. We don't have time. And we are building everything out. We are also partnering with the House districts that are running in Florida because we have to flip the Florida House before redistricting. So we are partnering with 4 out of the 5 House district candidates to get out the vote in their individual areas, because the better that they do, the better that we do. Mm-hmm. The better we do organizing North Central Florida, the better we are going to have infrastructure to actually flip Florida in November. And so we are obviously a very progressive campaign, but you have to be able to get along with other people and actually build a large coalition to be able to flip a place like that. And so that is what we are doing, and we are doing it on all levels. And at the end of the day, I think we've got a really good shot. So if you can give us a couple bucks, our average donation is basically $15 and I think 76 cents at this moment. You can do that through our website. At the same time, if you would like to phone bank, text bank, do anything like that, get in touch with us, send us an email at the website, same thing. I think that's pretty much it. Go follow us on social media, Twitter, it's AC for Congress 2020, Facebook, all of those. Would love to get some support through that as well.
Yeah, well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on today. I do encourage people to take him up on those offers. I think when you have the right strategy, that's where you put the investment in, because there's good money for feeling good about yourselves and following the popular movement, and then there's where do we flip a red seat blue, have the right strategy to do it, and also deliver progressive change at the same time. So, Adam, I want to thank you again for being here tonight.
Absolutely. Hey, I really appreciate you having me. I know that last night was a very tough act to follow. So, oh boy, yeah, you had me scared a little bit, but hey,
this is great. I love back-to-back, like, strategic minds. This is awesome. So, Adam, please keep in touch. We look forward to working with you as you continue through your campaign, and I wish you the best of luck in the days ahead.
Appreciate it, man. August 18th is our primary. We don't see any real issues going through that, and so, have us back at some point. We can let you know how it's going.
Sounds great. Well, have a great rest of your night, Adam.
Appreciate it, man.
Bye. Okay, everyone, that was Adam Christensen. I really do encourage you all, as you see going across the bottom of the page at For the Many, Not Just Me, please go and support his campaign. I really appreciated hearing his strategic approach today, how he tries to focus on the messaging. I think these are big issues for the progressive movement, and I think he would do a great job in helping us do that. And it's always beneficial when we can flip a red seat blue, because then we get some of the moderate Dems to also fight alongside with us. And that makes them then embrace our policies over time. So really appreciate having Adam on today. Let me just give you what we got going on for the rest of this week. Tomorrow, we're going to be having another episode of Full Bloom with Heidi and I. We'll be bringing on David Walker, who is a contributor here at the Hill of Roses, to be able to speak about how the Republican Party basically blew their opportunity to be able to speak to the Asian American population and has basically instead flamed the fires of racism. And then we're going to be talking with Elena Torres-Pepito, another contributor here at the Hill of Roses, on Friday, where she's going to be talking about how, the need for social justice as well as economic inequality need to be basically intertwined with one another. So we look forward to featuring both of our hardworking contributors' pieces. Be back here at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, my friends, I hope you guys are staying safe out there. And as always, I want you guys to be rosy.